I mean, just while we're on the subject of Ronald Koeman, Everton, John, the row between Martin O'Neill and Ronald Koeman over James McCarthy's fitness. It's not the first time. There's been there's been trouble, and there was trouble with Roberto Martinez, who was Everton's previous manager. But just to go to the O'Neill Koeman row over James McCarthy breaking down with a hamstring injury in the warm-up before the Wales game. Now, the way I see this is, if you have a hamstring and there's any doubt, you shouldn't be even thinking about playing. But Ireland would have, if I'd have been the coach, he'd have had a fitness test in the morning, a rigorous one, a tough one that tested everything. And if he came through that and said to Martin O'Neill, I'm okay, you wouldn't expect him to break down in the warm-up, would you?
Well, it can happen with a hamstring. It can happen. You know, you can feel good and then it goes. We don't know what happened, but I assume that he had some sort of a workout in the morning, or a tryout, to see if he was okay.
And he 2 days training, which I don't think is enough either, if you haven't played for 4 weeks.
Well, it goes back a long time with Everton. I mean, he's had 4 or 5 hamstrings, one after the other, over a period of 18 months probably. So I think there's something, what is the word, chronically wrong with the hamstring that hasn't been sorted out, to be quite honest. You can't, it's very unusual for players now to have 4 or 5 hamstrings within the space of 12 months. So I think Everton need to look at it as well to make sure they get him right. Martin O'Neill, as you know, the international managers have the right to bring a man in. I think Martin was probably a bit desperate to get McCarthy playing, which managers do, as you know, and will take risks. I mean, not right, but we've all done it. I'm sure you've done it.
But a hamstring is something you just can't take a risk with.
Well, if you trained in the morning, I mean, which I assumed he did, and he said, I feel okay. And I said to you, I think we were talking on the phone, you know, I've had a hamstring before where we actually played together away in a European match, and I had a hamstring, and I had to try it, and I said, it feels good. I did it after 10 minutes. It can happen with hamstring, and especially I think there's something wrong with McCarthy that needs to be put right from his hamstrings. So you can only go on what he says. If he has a tryout in the morning, which I'm sure he had some sort of a fitness test before the match to the day, where he said, I feel that feels okay, and that would be under a bit of pressure, I think, as well, because the manager was desperate for players, and it happens in football, as you know. I'm not saying it's right, because I think there should be total precaution in that given situation.
Liam, the responsibility for this, I mean, the player has some responsibility as well, doesn't he?
Oh yeah, he would have said, you know, ultimately, you know, when you're a player, you're asked by the coach or asked by the doctor, well, how does it feel? And you say, well, yeah, I'm going to be okay. I think I'm going to be okay. And then the manager has to weigh up, you know, the fact that he hasn't played for such a long time, or he's only had so many days training, and factor that into his decision. But as John said, Martin was struggling with a lot of players missing, and he probably thought, I don't need another one missing. But, you know, I don't know the ins and outs of James McCarthy's injury. But what I do know is that to have this public kind of row going on is all wrong, and this has been escalating for months.
Yes.
You know, both managers should have been able to meet up and, you know, talk about these things in private and give one another an assurance that, you know, whatever is said will be said in private, and if there's a disagreement, nobody's going to know about it, because it doesn't do anybody any good. And I believe, I don't know for sure, because someone told me, I mean, you might be able to help me, that in Martin's statement in response to Coleman, he got his facts wrong about how many days that James McCarthy had off in the summer, you know.
Yeah, that's right.
Things like this don't do anybody any good, do they? You know. And we talked about Roy Keane before. He's gone on the attack about Everton publicly.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's right, and I think John Delaney should really get a grip of it.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing of Keane giving press conferences is troubling. I mean, he gave a press conference before the Wales game And when he was asked about Gareth Bale, what he said, well, what we're going to do is hit him. What we need to do is hit him. And then he said, hard but fairly. But of course, the newspapers just took the phrase hit him, and that was the headline. And in my opinion, that would have put ideas in the Welsh camp in their head. These guys are going to have a go at us, and we all know how that ended up. I don't think Keane should be giving press conferences, John, do you?
Well, there's no other...
Provocative press conferences.
Well, if he's going to give a press conference, it's going to be provocative. And there's no other assistant manager does it. No. And the thing I have a slightly different summing up to yours on it. I think he did say fairly.
He did say fairly.
And the press reporter, but that's the press's fault. They shouldn't be doing that. Now, he shouldn't be given a licence. But I think on the night, this is my take on it now, none of us in the dressing room. I thought there was a bit of going on before half time.
Yeah.
There was an elbow here and an elbow there. And Ireland were definitely the more aggressive. They weren't dirty, but they were the more aggressive. And I believe, for what it's worth, I think Coleman, the manager, said these guys are bullying us.
Yeah.
And all managers hate that.
Yeah.
You've got to get into them.
Yeah.
Right? Because the two players that committed the worst fouls don't have a reputation for that.
Now, Glenn Whelan elbowed Joe Allen.
Yes.
And
there was a couple of tackles in it.
Shane Long left his foot on Williams's toe.
Yeah, there was a bit going on. Well, not a lot. But I think if a manager, any manager will say, look, these guys are over doing the physical stuff, we've got to respond. This is only my take on it. Yeah. And the Taylor was his name, wasn't it?
Yes.
Broke the leg. And Bale are not noted for, but and they're usually the worst guys for doing something because they don't really know how to do it. When the manager says we've got to be more aggressive, that's what I think happened for the second half. And unfortunately, and I'm sure Chris Coleman wouldn't want anything to happen, but there's always a possibility of it.
It would be a good idea, would it not, Liam, for Martin O'Neill to take his own press conferences and to let Roy take a rest and put the cones out?
Well, I don't know about that, but it's a long week, and even when I was with Trapattoni, he used to say to me today or Marco one day, do it, but you do it in a manner that you're just not going to be controversial. You're not going to really tell them anything. You're not going to tell them if you've got doubts about injuries and things like that. You're just very, very general. But as you know, Roy can't just be general. I don't know whether he goes out to make that point to begin with, but or controversial points to begin with, or whether the media lead him down that road, and he can't
help himself.
He can't help himself.
The other thing he said, John, he was doing a question and answers thing at his old club, Cove Ramblers, and he made a sarcastic remark about the FAI's backroom medical team, in which he said, they're full of doom and gloom. That's not exactly...
he said the leading doctor, I think he said the doctor was full of...
Doom and gloom. That's not good either, is it?
No, I mean, I think what Roy Keane said was this was at a private do and it wasn't supposed to go into public, but everybody knows there's no such thing as a private do nowadays. And funny enough, Martin O'Neill actually described the medical team as the best in Europe. So and I actually know Alan Bourne, Dr. Alan Bourne, and I'd say he's terrific. But he didn't respond to that.
But he would have heard about it.
Oh, of course, everybody heard about it, and it didn't do anybody any good. Let's put it that way.
One thing, Liam, just to finish on this. It does send signals out to clubs in England whose players are playing for the Irish team. I note, for example, that Harry Arter didn't travel to play against Wales, but he did play for Bournemouth at the weekend. He missed the greatest penalty miss I've ever seen, incidentally. But managers are very concerned, aren't they, that when their players are going for international weeks, that everything is taken care of in the right way.
Yeah, the communication between, particularly the medical departments, about players has to be spot on. If there's any doubts, the Premiership managers want to know. And if it's not like that, and if it's not really, really professional, I think it gives the managers an excuse to maybe say to the player, put the pressure on the player not to join up with on international duty by saying he's got a knock. That's always gone on. But with the Irish players, I think in general we've had a huge kind of allegiance to getting there, to being with the squad. Never was a problem. It was actually quite a big problem with Roy Keane when he was a player, but maybe that's another matter. So I think it has to be spot on. The communication,
trust,
the level of information, the trust between one another. It has to be good. And I noticed that as well, that Arthur wasn't involved with us, but yet he turned out on the Saturday evening against Southampton.
Yeah, and look,
I think that can happen. But from what I can gather, knowing a little bit about it, that the relationship actually between the medical parties and club, apart from Everton, and I don't think there's any row among the medical people there, but from what I can gather, the medical situation is very, very good. That they do communicate quite a lot. I mean, Everton is the only one that we've seen hadn't. And the thing is, from what I can gather with the medical association, the doctors don't actually make the decision.
No,
but you can only give an opinion, and then that's the medical opinion, and then it's the football opinion.
Yeah.
But from what I can gather,
John, I'm not saying it's not excellent, because
I know you're not.
It was when I was there. I just want to make that point.
Quite right.
Eamon's,
I'm not trying to
be
imply
that way for any association.
Yeah. I didn't mean to imply on your comment, Liam. It's just that it is a good communication between the medical people. It has to be nowadays.
And maybe just to finish, Roy Keane shouldn't be given provocative press conferences because he can't help himself.
Well, for his own good and for Martin's good.
Yeah.
I mean, he's the only assistant manager who does it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you asked me who's the assistant manager of Wales, I couldn't tell you.
No.
Or Northern Ireland.
No.
Or Scotland.
No.
I wouldn't know.
Italy.
Wouldn't know.
Spain. Brazil.
any of them, Eamon.
Liam might help us with Italy. No, Liam? I can help you with Northern Ireland and Scotland. Mark McGee is in Scotland. Northern Ireland is Jimmy Nicholl.
Oh, okay.
Wales is Mark Allen, I think, or Mark. He's with Stoke City. There's a few couple from Stoke's coaching staff. But yeah, you're right. But I don't mind. They seem to be enjoying the fact that Martin doesn't seem to mind that Roy calls the headlines the next day. So there's maybe method in their kind of handling of things.